harassment is happening because
the
they
role
can.
of women. I mean, women think about now during
the
COVID,
National
what
Gender-Based
do you need
Violence
to do?
and
Cook,
Feminized
clean,
Strategic
be on
Plan
a webinar,
2020
homeschool,
is good
so
as a marker,
your work
and
has been extended.
institutions
Of course,
linked obviously to government
mostly
need to
burden falls to
engage
women.
that and
I
see
also
how
need
in the
to
workplace
also
you can
say
make it
upfront,
real. It has to be a living document. We cannot only have theory and talk shops, as an earlier speaker has said. I want to end by quoting President Ramaphosa, where he says that the South Africa we want is a country where all its citizens are able to lead their lives of dignity and freedom, and where the vulnerable and marginalized are protected by our Constitution. As we reclaim our society from the clutches of violence, homophobia, chauvinism, and misogyny, the National Strategic Plan has to be both our shield and our armor. Will this be achieved in our lifetime or even in our children's lifetime and their children's lifetime? I believe that we are at a space where we're in the middle of difficulties, but the middle of difficulties can also be a space for an opportunity. I think I also want to say to women today, do not always think of all the misery, but the beauty still remains. You are never too old to set another goal and dream a new dream. I thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to Professor Cheryl. Really, we have learned so much. I think there is so much we need to learn and unlearn, and it's a long journey. And there's so much behavior that we need to change when it comes to dealing with the norms. When it comes to uprooting the social norms to end the gender-based violence. So what's going to happen to all our viewers, if you have a question, please can you just drop us a question on the chat so that as we go along with our program, we'll be able to answer your questions. And also I would like to tell you that our webinar is streamed live on eThekwini Municipality's social media platforms. That is Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can connect with us via all these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you have a question, just drop a question in your chat via Teams, and your question will be answered as we go along with our program. So without any waste of time, I would like to continue with our program. Right now, we are going to talk about the continuum of gender-based violence in the workplace. So with us, we have invited Mr. Mlondolozi Vava, who is a provincial legal advisor. He is going to address us on the continuum of gender-based violence in the workplace. Thank you so much, and welcome to you, Mr. Mlondolozi Vava.
Thank you very much, Sisi, for welcoming me and giving us, as the Commission for Gender Equality, the opportunity to speak to the eThekwini Municipality ladies today. I am hoping that the program was made available for men to also attend, because as the Commission for Gender Equality, we believe that equality goes a long way. That's why each and every time we are invited, we are always making a point to the program organizers that they include men in their meetings, they include men in their topics of discussions. So what I'm doing at the moment, I want to screen share the presentation and just let me know if you can see it. In the meantime, I just want to greet everyone that is attending this webinar today, this morning, especially the eThekwini Municipality women and the guests and the presenters today. this is an opportunity we do not want to take lightly as the Commission for Gender Equality. And to the mayor, we greet you, and to the acting municipal manager, thank you for inviting the CGE to be part and parcel of this presentation today. As I'm just waiting for the slides to pop up on my side before I start with the talk today. As the Commission for Gender Equality, sorry about this technical glitch. I did not expect it to do it like this. Sorry, it's taking a little bit long to load. Okay, there we go. The slides from your side, because on my side they are popping up. Sorry about this technical glitch. The network on my side seems to be slow, but it's sorting itself. Slides. I think I'm frozen. Okay, there we go. I think we're back on track. My name is Mlondolozi Vava. I work for the Commission for Gender Equality as a provincial legal advisor. Today we are invited to talk about the continuum of gender-based violence in the workplace. But before I do that, I would like to talk about the mandate of the Commission for Gender Equality. Our mandate comes from the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, especially Section 187, subsection 1, where it gives us the powers to promote gender equality. And the additional powers that we have come from Section 11 of the CGE Act, where we are given powers to monitor, investigate, research, and educate and lobby. And then the vision of the Commission for Gender Equality, we have a vision of a society that is free from all norms of gender, oppression and equality. Our mission is to monitor, evaluate and make recommendations on policies of the public and private sector, information and educational programs. We investigate matters, we resolve and rectify gender issues, collaborate with government and civil society. Okay. The objective of the presentation today is to give a broader explanation of what we call the continuum of gender-based violence in the workplace. To the Commission for Gender Equality, that is synonymous with sexual harassment. If you talk about gender-based violence in the workplace, for the Commission of Gender Equality, that is tantamount to sexual harassment. So what we'll be exploring in the presentation today, we will want to help people to understand what constitutes sexual harassment and types of sexual harassment and steps to be followed in cases where sexual harassment occurs in the workplace. Okay, sexual harassment, I always say to people when they ask me, but what is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment it can be explained in so many different ways, but for us today, I want us to focus on this definition of sexual harassment. It is basically unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, which could make a person feel offended, humiliated, intimidated, and violate the rights of an employee. With victims both are men and women. Let me repeat this. Victims of sexual harassment can be men and women. Sexual harassment does not discriminate based on sex or based on gender. So maybe you're asking yourself, what constitutes or what forms part of sexual harassment? Sexual harassment can be physical. Physical, it includes touching, the likes of that, and then it can be verbal or written and discriminatory by nature. It is constitute a barrier to equality in the workplace. Section 6, subsection 3 of the Employment Equity Act provides that sexual harassment of an employee is prohibited from unfair discrimination. Why are we focusing on the workplace? Because the workplace is such an area that is governed many different legislations in South Africa. That's why we want to expunge and talk more about what happens in the workplace. So what happens at the workplace? Work-related events between people sharing the same workplace or colleagues outside of work. This is a question when many people are not well vested with when it comes to sexual harassment. The question of whether colleagues, when they are out together, but they are in a party somewhere, the question always arises whether the employee can entertain such matters where colleagues go out to have a drink outside of the working environment and then sexual harassment occurs there. So many people are having a difficulty of understanding what constitutes sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? I thought that I should share these pictures to you so that you understand what is sexual harassment. So sexual harassment, if you look at the lady sitting on top of the man there, many people think that women are only victims of sexual harassment, but in our modern society, things are changing. You've seen many cases of women sexually harassing men and vice versa. So that is why we always talk about gender equality as the Commission for Gender Equality. So when are we going to achieve gender equality? As the Commission for Gender Equality, we believe that gender equality can be achieved when men and women enjoy the same benefits and opportunities across all sectors of society, including economic emancipation and decision-making, and when the different behaviors, aspiration, needs of women and men are equally valued and favored. The previous speaker, the professor, mentioned that in one of her comments that a woman may come up with a clear, valid point, but because she's a woman, her point would not be entertained. But a man who shares the same vision of a point that the woman shared earlier, the decision or that point can be taken and implemented because that person that shared the vision is a man. So we want to move from that as the Commission for Gender Equality and people to be treated equally based on their intellect, based on the fact that they are human beings. So you're asking yourself what types of gender-based violence are out there. As I said earlier on, that gender-based violence is the same, but when it comes to workplace, there are different policies that an employer can develop to ensure that gender-based violence does not happen in the workplace. So types of gender-based violence that most people commonly know are physical, sexual, emotional, and psychological evidence, including battering that occurs due to the fact that you are a female, it's occurring within the general community, sexual harassment and intimidation at work, or in the educational institution, or elsewhere, can be called gender-based violence. So that's why many legislations in South Africa allow for the development of policies by the employer to ensure that the employer creates a safe environment for all its employees in the workplace. So this causes of sexual harassment is not an inclusive list, but we thought that we need to make mention of this. The cause of sexual harassment varies from person to person. No one can come with a clear definition of a cause of sexual harassment. And you are asking yourself, what can be a cause of sexual harassment? Things like culture, things like religion and values in society and in companies can cause sexual harassment to take place in the working environment. As Black people, we grew up knowing that it's okay to whistle when a young, attractive lady walks by, or when you see someone that you like walks by. But because of the culture that we grew up as young people, we know it was okay to even say "Dudu ntombazana" when you see someone that you like, and it was accepted by our culture. And men still find it very difficult for them to move past that because it has been indoctrinated within us that it is okay ukushela intombazana in any way to get the attention. But when we take that culture and put it in the working environment, then something else comes to play. The company will tell you about sexual harassment. That's where the dilemma gets to start. That's why there's so much burden on the employer to make sure that the working environment is such a safe place for all employees. Unwelcome sexual jokes. We know many people say sexual jokes in jest to each other, unwanted questions about sexual life. This is becoming more prominent in our day-to-day running when people engage in topics of sex and make sexual jokes and ask questions about sexual life of different partners. So the different roles and powers and the status of men and women in the companies are also concerned. So with the touching, rude gestures being stared at in an offensive way, this is where many people have a difficulty with understanding that even when you stare at someone, when you look at someone these days can constitute sexual harassment. Even closing your eye or blinking your eye towards another person in our days can be called sexual harassment. So moral values and divorce and cultural beliefs bring up many things that can cause sexual violence in the workplace. And then this is also one thing that we've come up with the commission, as we notice that many companies do not have policies in place, like your gender-based violence policy or your sexual harassment policy in place. Many companies, you will find that they might even have these policies, but they are sitting somewhere gathering dust. They are not being communicated to the staff. They're not being communicated to the most junior staff in the workplace. It may be the policy is being communicated only to senior management, and the junior staff do not know what to do when they're sexually harassed at the workplace. And this obligation is embedded in our legislation, which emanates from Section 60 of the Employment Equity Act, that provides for vicarious liability of the employer. This is something new that is many employees now are beginning to be aware of in South Africa, that, you know what, if I am being sexually harassed by an employee working for an employer, you know what, I can claim money, I can be compensated for the incidents that the employee does to me and when they sexually harass me. You know what, every time that we talk about vicarious liability, we always want to mention that you cover yourself first. Number one, Section 60 always emphasizes that the victim is expected to report the incident. If you do not report the incident, the employer is not going to be aware that you are being sexually harassed in your working environment. And then the section also provides that the employer must take necessary steps to eliminate any alleged conduct and comply with the provisions of the Act. So one thing we have noticed as the Commission for Gender Equality is that most employers do in nowadays, if a junior employee reports a case of sexual harassment against a senior member of the company or government institution, is that the employer will remove the junior employee from the work area that she used to work or that he used to work. But in our case, we found that to be very wrong. We're asking people now to remove the senior member because the senior member is the perpetrator. Why are you further victimizing the junior employee by removing them from the environment? And then we also look at the failure that, and it is proved, therefore, employer will be deemed to have failed to do so. If the employer doesn't do anything about the case that is reported, then the company can be held vicariously liable. Employer excused from employee's conduct if it is shown that proven reasonable steps were taken to ensure that such employee does not do that. You know what? If the employer does his part in terms of combating sexual harassment in the workplace, then the employer can never be held liable for the actions of the employee. So I would like us to discuss case law now to show to you as the participants of the webinar today that case law is there and people are getting compensated for being victimized at the work environment, and companies are losing a lot of money just by not promoting and ensuring that the working environment of their employees is free from all gender discrimination and all forms of violence. In the Liberty Group PTYL case versus Makusang, which is a 2017 case, it was noted that although complainant was harassed in more than 4 occasions, and the employer failed to consult relevant parties and take the necessary steps to eliminate the conduct, and therefore Masango was awarded money just for that. The consequences of sexual harassment on the company. Let's talk about the municipality. How much money is the municipality losing through its legal costs? In our case, we've noted that many companies do not have policies and they're losing a lot of money by not providing employees with a safe working environment. And the legal costs keep on climbing, which is money that can be diverted for the use of other things to promote gender equality in the workplace. And then I would like us to focus on these cases that I'm going to be explaining to you or talking to you about at this point in time. We've got the case of Tsapo versus Real Security CC, which is a 2003 decision. The applicant was working as a security officer and took her matter to the labor court claiming compensation from the employer on the ground that she was sexually harassed by her supervisor. That led to her resigning. So what happened in this case is that Ms. Ntsapo resigned because she was being sexually harassed by her supervisor. She claimed that she was being touched on her breast, thighs, and buttocks and genitalia to stimulate a sexual act. The court ruled in her favor that there was sexual harassment from sex of discrimination. Secondly, it found that the applicant reported sexual harassment to the owner of the company and as required by Section 60 of the Employment Equity Act, even though it was not reported immediately. Here's the cardinal. I want you to focus on this. You do not have to report it immediately, but it would work greatly for you to report it immediately. And she was awarded 82,000 rands for being sexually harassed at work. And then the Hopla case, the employer can be held vicariously liable since he has a legal obligation to create and amend. And then this case of Christian versus Collier's Properties, an applicant was working as a clerk and took the matter to the labor court claiming compensation in terms of Section 194 of the Labor Relations Act and damages in terms of Section 50 or subsection 1 of the Employment Equity Act on the ground of unfair dismissal emanating from sexual harassment by her manager. These are the facts of the case. She was invited for a date, sit on the manager's laps, kissed her on the neck. The court in that matter found in her favor and awarded her 58,000 rand. In Gako versus Anglo Platinum, the applicant failed to report or lodge a grievance to the employer against. As a result, she could not succeed in claiming damages for sexual harassment against a previous employer after resigning. However, the court ordered that she be reinstated in her previous job. So I want you to, why am I sharing these cases to you? I want to drive the fact that the employer is solely responsible to create a safe working environment within the workplace. And the requirements that a person needs to report a sexual harassment case, as you can see in that previous case, that she did not get compensated because she failed to report the sexual harassment case to the employer. So the reporting of sexual harassment, we always say to make things easier for her or for him to prove his case against the perpetrator, the victim must keep a record of all sexual harassment incidents, write them down, and capture the following: the dates of the incidents, times and places where the incident took place, who else was present and saw and heard anything that was said or done to you. The recording will help to remind you of the details of the incidents to help you prove your case during case proceedings. So it is very important never to let things lie. Always make sure you keep a record of what is happening to you as an employee in the working environment, so that when time comes, when you report a case of incidents of sexual harassment, you can easily prove your case of sexual harassment. So many companies have two procedures to follow when it comes to sexual harassment. The first one is an informal one, and the second one is a formal one. So what happens in most cases, people choose to take either of them. So the informal one is you as the employee, you can approach the perpetrator to tell them, listen, I do not like what you're doing, stop it. Or maybe you can even ask your friend to speak directly to the perpetrator to tell him to stop. Or you can take the formal route, which includes internal processes of the employer, and then you report it to the employer, and then the employer will initiate his or her internal processes. But this is where the trick is. If the company does not have a policy, what is going to be instituted? How is the matter going to be entertained? How is the matter going to be dealt with? So that is why it is very important that an organization needs to have a sexual harassment policy, or in terms of the Labor Relations Act. And then we have a various ways or various legal framework that is out there to protect people from sexual harassment in the workplace, to create a safe environment in the workplace. For example, we have the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa that enshrines each and every right in the Constitution to be enjoyed by everyone. And then we've got the Labor Relations Act and the Employment Equity Act that prohibits sexual harassment. And the Labor Relations Act, however, is the main law dealing with sexual harassment in the working environment. Therefore, the Commission for Conciliation and Mediation, Arbitration, and the Bargaining Councils are legal forums to deal with disputes in the workplace, including sexual harassment, even the labor court. So it is very important that if your employer is not initiating any form of disciplinary action against the perpetrator in the workplace, you report it externally. You can go to the CCMA, you can go to the Bargaining Council for you to get recourse against the perpetrator or even the employer. And then we've also got the Amended Code of Good Practice on Handling of Sexual Harassment. The code was designed to eliminate sexual harassment in the workplace, to provide appropriate procedure to deal with sexual harassment and prevents its reoccurrence. This encourages and promotes the development and the implementation of policies in the workplace that will lead in a workplace that is free from sexual harassment. So even if a company does not have a policy on sexual harassment, it can use the good code of practice on handling sexual harassment cases in the workplace. Maybe you're asking yourself, what is the way forward in terms of this? How can you stop gender-based violence in the workplace, or even sexual harassment in the workplace? You know, the Equality Act and the Employment Act must not only be verbal consultations with senior managers. That's why we are saying to you, if you have these policies, do your ground floor employees know about them? You should not just consult with senior members or senior managers in your institution, but the consultations should be taken to every employee in the organization, and practical consistency consultation be good enough to be daily monitored and evaluated. You know what? I liked the previous speaker's comment where she said that the policies should be put on the wall of the employer's business place, so that everyone can be able or be in a position to read for themselves what the sexual harassment policy says, or what the gender-based violence policy in the workplace says. We also promote people to report their matters, especially to the Commission for Gender Equality, for us to monitor the processes internally of what is happening with their cases. For example, you can ask other Chapter 9 institutions like the South African Human Rights Commission and the Public Protector to get involved with in your matter. You can consult any employee or employer or human rights violations, or even outside the working environment. So the question of gender-based violence in the working environment is a very good step in the right direction. The Commission for Gender Equality is passionate about.
We are just running out of time. If you can just wrap up now, because we've gone past your time.
Yes, ma'am. I am wrapping up. Thank you for reminding me about time issue. So that brings my topic to
You have cut him. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Vava, for such a very enlightening presentation on the continuum of gender-based violence in the workplace. Really, we have learned so much, and I'm grateful that at eThekwini Municipality we have our own sexual harassment policies, and I'm sure our employees are even aware of what is going on. And if it happens that as an employee you don't understand how the policy works, you have to really talk to your HR and get acquainted. And this is very wonderful that this morning we've been empowered so much on the processes and procedures to follow when you are encountered by these challenges in the working environment. And we are so grateful that our employer must really ensure that, they create a safer environment for all our employees so that there is no gender discrimination against our employees. So that is why even today we are insisting that as a eThekwini Municipality, we are saying no to gender-based violence, and we are saying no to sexual harassment in the working environment. So please, if you have a question, remember to drop us a question and direct it to any guest that you want him or her to answer your question. Please remember to do that. And also, we are live on YouTube, we are live on Twitter and Facebook. Connect with us and continue with the conversation. Without any waste of time, now we are going to our next speaker. This speaker is going to talk about her own personal story on this. So please help me welcome Mrs. Msomi. She's one of our employees from eThekwini Municipality. Over to you, Mpume.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the Mayor, the City Manager, all councillors present, all officials, all protocol is observed. Today I'm going to be sharing my story. Let me just explain what is intimate partner violence. It's a form of gender-based violence. It can be defined as abuse that happens in a close relationship. An intimate partner can be a spouse. Intimate partner violence differs on how often it happens and how severe it is. It can range from one episode of violence that could have lasting impacts and several episodes over many years.
Yes, you can continue.
4 types of behaviors, which are there's physical violence. This is when a person hurts you or tries to hurt you by using physical force. There's sexual violence, which is forcing or attempting to force a partner to take part in sexual acts. Can be sexual touching or non-physical sexual event, which is king, which is a pattern of repeated unwanted attention and contact by a partner that causes fear for one's safety. And then the last one is emotional abuse, which is the use of verbal and non-verbal communication with the intent to harm another person. So in a relationship, you find in one relationship, it's possible that you can find all these behaviors that I've just mentioned now, where in one relationship you experience physical abuse, sexual abuse, stalking, and emotional abuse. Intimate partner violence, it's a silent public health epidemic in South Africa. It's the second highest burden of disease after HIV and AIDS. According to a statement that was made by President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech on the 12th of July, 50 experienced violence at the hands of their partners. I'm also a survivor of that. I experienced it many years ago. I'm married now when I was young, but it's an experience of reasons I started an organization